technologies that we're talking about, which crucial to that is the data that we're talking about. It's a collaborative effort that we said as a government, gone are the days where we legislate as if we're legislating for government only. Legislation and policy and regulation is for the country. Therefore, if you want to turn the center around to make sure that this department and the other sectors, they respond positively towards the GDP, we've got to start thinking like that and act like that. That's why we'll be introducing different legislations that must be responsive, but most importantly, that must be agile to appreciate the developments that are out there.
One thing that your department has definitely been struggling or sort of dealing with of late is definitely with regards to funding. And this is another segment where to grow this segment of the fourth industrial revolution, it is going to need some sort of funding. Where are we going to get that from?
Definitely, as government, we can't be funding everything. That's why I spoke of collaboration with the private sector, because it is when private sector is able to invest in a country, which becomes crucial for us as the government and parliament to create that enabling environment. Therefore, ours is not only to fund, but let's make sure that there's a conducive environment for people who want to invest in South Africa. President earlier on made mention of the fact that we need to make sure that we go for venture capitalism, where they're going to assist in terms of the Silicon Valley type of funding of startups, to say, you've got a great idea, how can we build on it? This is the money, this is what I can do. And that's what we're trying to do, building that entrepreneurial state that President spoke about. And that's going to take long, because most people still believe that they must be given education so that they can be employed. That's the message we're trying to drum upon people, to say, gone are the days that you must be a slave, that you must be employed. Of course, there are those that will be employed, but also do want to create jobs, because we believe that we can grow this economy by shaping up the entrepreneurs or the SMME sector, which is why, again, we talk about creating a conducive environment, working with the Department of Small Business Development, working with Treasury. How do you make sure that instead of saying when there's a technology that has been established in South Africa, you want them to compete with the one that's in Asia because of your procurement system? How do you give priority to the South African produced innovations? If America and China were to wake up and say, we're pulling everything from South Africa, what would happen to our country? And that's what we want young people to think about, the kind of South Africa they want to build, the future they must choose. This one that we are living in was fought for by other people, it was chosen by other people, but we're given an opportunity to shape our own.
Very finally, Minister, we need to make sure that this conversation doesn't end here, that today isn't just the day where we focus on this and then we'll talk about it again next year. How do we take this conversation forward?
We had said this is the first of the dialogue that we needed to create as the country, because we said we need a coherent plan. And we can't have a coherent plan if we're not engaging with all. The work that has been done by Forza is great work, because they interacted with almost all stakeholders. Now the Presidential Commission will build on that and then further take the program to say, how do you go to provinces? From provinces, how do you make sure they input towards that blueprint document that President was talking about, so that they can finalize the document with the people of South Africa and the people in South Africa taking interest and an action to say, this is what we want to see happening in our country in relation to the jobs and the lives that we want to live. Because it's not just for IR, but it's how we live our jobs. It's how we want to create our jobs, but at the same time, it's how we want to grow the economy so that South Africa can occupy its rightful place in the global world.
I certainly hope to continue to engage with you on this matter very soon, and we'll hopefully discuss it a little bit more. But Minister, thank you so much for the time, really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll chat again about this. The Minister there of Communications, Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams there, of course, just talking to us just about how government plans to collaborate and not just do this on their own, but really ensure that they can engage on the matter a whole lot more than this. And hopefully we can get the conversation going, not just with ourselves, right, and not just with government, and hope that government will pull through with regards to how things have fared. Nompo, I hope you don't mind, but I'm certainly going to call another guest to actually come speak to us as well. And Dr. Brian Abrams is really from FIRSA itself, the Fourth Industrial Revolutionary Partnership with South Africa, as they try to perhaps engage this conversation. Started here, but really move beyond this scenario as well. Dr. Armstrong, thank you so much for the time. Really, really appreciate it. How do we... Yours is probably the toughest job, isn't it? To actually engage with all the social partners, all the partners that are involved here, and ensure that we take this forward.
I don't think it's really a tough job, because what's amazing about it is everybody wants to talk about it. In fact, the reason we got together in a way, because everybody was talking about it, and almost any day of the week, any month, you can go online, you can pick up a newspaper, and there's a conference or something happening on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. But the concern for us was these are all divergent conversations. They're not coming together anywhere. Yeah. So what we felt the need was to let's try and bring a bit more coherence into the discussion by bringing all these different conversations together. So the interesting thing is it's not getting people to talk about it, that's the hard thing. Everybody wants to talk about it, which is great, that's the right thing. But what we need to start doing as a country is start talking about it together, that we start bringing these different strands, that we can develop a coherent plan for South Africa in the fourth industrial revolution.
Are you finding that there is a sense of one kind of message, one streamlined message, one that South Africa can perhaps adhere to on its own? We've had a lot of plans for many other things. This will just add to that, but the implementation and the infrastructure that we have, does that fit the conversations you're having?
Well, I think at this point, I don't think there is a single common message. I think there's a lot of diverse opinions, but hey, that's okay, because I think it's important that we have a rich conversation and we don't all have to agree initially. This process is about coming to a few common positions about things that are important that we need to focus on. And there's a few common themes that are definitely emerging already. So we do need to get our digital infrastructure ready for the future. So that's the cost of data, the availability of data, our data protection laws, our data security infrastructures. So that's one theme. Another theme that's come out absolutely central to all of our workshops is skills, education, and making sure that our educational system, and when I say that I don't only mean the formal sort of primary, secondary, tertiary education system, the broader education ecosystem, that's fit for purpose for the 21st century and is readying the kids of today and tomorrow for the world of work that they will be entering. A third theme that comes out is, of course, the concern around jobs. And how is it that we make sure that we create more jobs than those that are displaced? Because we know jobs will be displaced, but we also know there's huge opportunity to create more jobs. How do we make sure that those jobs that are created are here in South Africa, that we have the right skills to be able to do it, and that we do it at enough scale to offset those jobs that we lose? So those will be three absolutely common themes that are already coming out of the discussion. I think another one, so people often ask me, so what should we do to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution? And in my view, to business and to individuals, it's invest. And it's about invest your time, invest your attention, but also invest your money in creating the capacities to grasp new business models, invest in new areas of business, invest in unlocking new customer segments, invest in the skills of the future. Approach the fourth industrial revolution with a spirit of optimism and abundance, rather than the fourth industrial revolution with a spirit of fear and pessimism. Because if we are ruled by fear, we won't invest. Sure. We'll withdraw into ourselves and then we won't be prepared.
Yeah. As you speak about preparedness, you've also mentioned how we need to perhaps get the right sense of education, understanding. Upskilling becomes a big part of the entire conversation. Do you feel that we're getting enough people to be upskilled, to get into understanding? And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get into tertiary institutions or the like, but just beginning to understand the conversation that we need to have to boost and grow the segment of the market that we're trying to build upon.
I think the short answer to your direct question is, are we doing it at enough scale? At the moment, the answer is no. Are people talking about it enough, and do people recognize the need for it and that we need to do things differently? Absolutely yes. I think we're all still grappling with how do we do this at a scale that's not going to reskill 10,000 people or 50,000 people? How do we do it at a scale that is going to reskill millions or 2 or 3 or 5 million people? Yeah. So we as a business school at WITS, for example, we are introducing a number of things into our curriculum to help people develop their skills to be effective in a world of digital business. Other universities are doing the same. But this has to be a top priority. It has to be one of the key conversations that we take forward.
Dr. Armstrong, appreciate your time. Really, really thank you so much for that. Right, so the fourth industrial revolution conversation continues here in Midrand, then Nompu. As you can tell then from FIRSA, the secretary then from FIRSA, as we get that partnership going with South Africa, it's a collaborative effort. And the minister's saying outright that no matter what happens, it needs to be something that is set between cohesive partners, but government cannot do it alone. So how do we all play a part? Everything from corporate South Africa to social and local South Africans as well. We, you and I, can certainly be a part of it by allowing ourselves to engage with the newest technology, allowing ourselves to actually form a part of the change and not necessarily just think that the jobs are going to disappear and we have nobody to skill us up. We can certainly do that ourselves as well. Nompo, as I said, the conversation does continue here in Midrand and we'll continue to bring you the latest, but for now, it's back to you in studio. Right, so the fourth industrial revolution, of course, continues to be the buzzword today, and it has been the buzzword for quite some time. How do we ensure that South Africa plays its role, that South Africa forms a formidable part of the discussion? It aims to be part of the country's movement in moving the growth spectrum forward, and of course creating the development when it comes to jobs and the like as well. Well, in getting this started, who better to do so than the startup companies of South Africa? And in that case, let's chat to the CEO of Startup Bootcamp Afritech, and that's Philip Kirchhoff. Philip, thank you so much for the time, really appreciate it. Forming a part of this conversation has certainly been quite interesting, and you must have certainly come out with a few interesting tidbits as well. Do tell us about those.
No, it's actually been amazing to be here. So we are the first ever world-class accelerator program on the African continent, hosted right here in South Africa. And so we've been running for 3 years, and we keep seeing, we're really at the forefront in terms of finding the most innovative and disruptive startups and scale-ups in the African context. And we're very excited that the South African startups, of course, are leading the way. But it's a very tough environment. And it involves not only the startups doing what they do, but really finding key partnerships in government and corporates and academia to help build that ecosystem. So it's inspiring to see some of the key quotes and motivations and this financial support from government and from corporate partners to fuel that.
Yeah, that partnership element is the one that I want to focus on for a little bit here as well then. How are you finding that? Are you finding that you've been sort of well received, that you've been taken in and really just been allowed to sort of collaborate at the best possible way in order to build on what we're trying to create here?
I would love to say yes. It's been a tough journey. Yeah. There are some very forward-thinking corporates and government partners that we've been able to engage with. At the same time, at a broader level, we need to see more of that. Because in order for South Africa to step up at the global scale, and even on the African continent, we are seeing that other countries and other organizations are really investing tremendous amounts of money and resources into building these partnerships. So it's a competitive world. We are excited to have the partners that we have, but we're always looking for new partners to join that can help move that forward. And truly it's a culture shift. So in the ecosystems in the West, you see that they embrace failure. They look at failure as something that is just moving the needle forward. Here, and as the president said today, a lot of times South Africans, we downplay our own accomplishments. Mobile money was invented on the African continent. Mobile money is 15 years ahead on the African continent over what's happening in the West. But we don't talk about that as a great forward leap that was developed and exploited here. Yeah. So those are the kinds of things where we don't have to invent robotics, we don't have to invent AI, but it's the practical applications, and there's hundreds of startups out there that are exploring this. What they need is corporate partners, government, academia that can help them scale and reach parity with the rest of the West.
Yeah. How do we get that going then? How do we ensure that it actually moves the needle forward? How do we, because the big fear then is that we don't get enough funding, that you don't get enough support in that terms. And you've mentioned that, yes, it has been a difficult time for you, but how do we ensure that the conversation moves beyond just a conversation and beyond people just fearing that they're going to fail, but that we actually get things done?
Sure, so programs like ours run an accelerated, we like to describe it as a safe sandbox, yeah, where failure is perfectly acceptable. We run very light, lean, agile experiments with the startups, where we match them up with corporate partners where you can do stuff in a safe environment to prove the concepts, and then you take these pilots and these proof of concept projects, and the corporates now are comfortable to scale them out into the broader market. So, more corporates embracing that kind of lean, agile approach and working with us gets access to this. So just as an example, in this last 3 months, we had over 1,800 applications for 10 spots to get into our program. We would love to be able to run more programs. We just need more corporate partners on board that can, expand this.
Yeah. All right, very quickly in final terms then, what is the fourth industrial revolution to you?
So it's a quantum leap forward, and it's described generally as being around artificial intelligence. but we really look at it more from a standpoint of what are the practical applications around those technologies. So it's very little to do with, when they say, electricity as a profound leap forward, it enabled so many other things. Artificial intelligence is going to enable, but we like to find the practical applications on the ground and help make real impact for real Africans across the continent.
Yeah. Stephen, Philip, sorry, my apologies. Thank you so much for the time, really appreciate it. Have an absolutely wonderful one here as well. Thank you so much. There's Philip Kurikoff there coming through from the Startup Bootcamp AfriTech. He's the CEO of that there as well. As you can tell, then the message clearly is that even if you fail, why not? Fail indeed and start again so that you can perhaps kick off the process a little bit more, move the needle a little bit further than you have previously. The fourth industrial revolution is already here. How we play catch up, how we indeed take on our successes is going to be quite important here. How do we ensure that things like robotics, AI, aren't things that we need to recreate, but take on to make it applicable to the problems that we have and find the right kind of solutions. We'll continue to give you the latest from the first Fourth Industrial Revolution Summit here at the Gallagher Convention Center in Midrand. It started many, many years ago, and hundreds of years ago, in fact, when you just think back to the first industrial revolution and just how things have progressed, whether it be the printing press right through to robotics. How does that form a big part of the fourth industrial revolution? Now, getting into our current conversation around building an economy that is sustainable beyond just its current workforce, in enabling that efficiency and innovation form a big part of the conversation. So let's talk now to Kollega Luana from the Do Good Circle as they perhaps unpack this a little bit more for us. Kollega, thank you so much for the time, really appreciate it. Why don't you just tell us what the Do Good Circle actually does and is all about?
Thank you, Arabile, and good afternoon to your viewers. The Do Good Circle is a women-led non-profit organization that focuses on facilitating the skills of coding and robotics to our youth in the outskirts, and we mainly work with TVET colleges as we are in a partnership with the Nelson Mandela Foundation.
And I can imagine that you're then based out in areas in which this is most probably a dominant need.
Yes, we'll find that there's lots, there's talk of digital economy in the urban areas, but in the peri-urban, in rural areas, there's absolutely nothing going on. Precisely, universities are also still better off, but you find that TVET colleges are even the most, under-resourced. And so that's where we're focusing, so we're rural and mainly the under-resourced areas, and youth that would, under normal circumstances, would not come into contact with artificial world and robotics and coding, and so we gear them up for the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah, and some would say though that things like robotics are perhaps a far-fetched concept. It's absolutely crazy. You have to be a rocket scientist or some sort of mechanic to at least understand these. Is that really the case here?
No, that's a fallacy, and that's why we have to take this message beyond and far, and we have to take it to every nook and cranny. Everyone has to learn to code. Now when I order food from Mr. Delivery, I wouldn't be surprised if a robot knocks and delivers my food. The president was just saying we all need to reimagine and see a new world, a new South Africa, because that's exactly, and it's arrived, it's landed. Yeah.
How do you make sure then that you have the right skills, the right development, and perhaps even the right funding to continue your project, which is obviously a key necessity in an industry that we're trying to grow as a country?
Okay, so that's a good point. We are currently talking to Corporate South Africa to try and assist, because we're just an NPO. There's so much that we could do, that we could achieve. We're currently running a pilot program in Umtata. We only have 240 learners. But if only you knew how much talent there is out there, we just don't have enough partners to come on board. So we are calling on all corporate companies that are interested in making sure that even their employees are geared for the future, to come on board and support the Do Good Circle and make sure that we capture as many students as we can that have the capacity. Obviously, we look at analytical skills, your creative thinking, in order to be able, because you're coming on board to build something. So you need to be able to be analytical and think, have a certain capacity in terms of thinking.
You certainly are doing good. Thank you so much for the time, though, Koleka. Really, really appreciate it there. Koleka Luanda is from the Do Good Circle, and she's the convener of that NPO there. As you can tell then, it's making sure that robotics forms a part of day-to-day, living day-to-day society, and allowing ourselves then to learn, to capture, to innovate, and to grow as well. We'll continue to give you the latest then from the first Fourth Industrial Revolution Summit here at the Gallagher Convention Center in Midrand. But for now, it's back to you in studio.
The part for me simply was to start the conversation. So it's probably the simplest part, in the sense that what we try to do is to get government, business, civil society and labor in one room, create a structured platform for a conversation, so that as a country for the first time we can have a national discourse. We don't have to all to agree, but at least let's begin to understand each other, and then use that to formulate a national response as a country. Fact of the matter is that the digital economy is here. Fact of the matter is that the 4IR implications are very, very dire. And unless we prepare ourselves as a country properly, and unless we understand what the risks are and what the opportunities are, we may just find ourselves on the wrong side of that history. And I think that's what we achieved today. So the conference really is a culmination of months and months of work. So there's a big report, which will then hand over to the Presidential Commission, which will then inform them how they can then take the process forward. So for us, that has been the kind of role that we have played.
Yeah. The question becomes, though, is the critical part in this is that people might look to your company to say, you have to help lead us. Do you feel that pressure?
Well, we do, but there's a lot of able people as well who are willing to lean in and make a contribution, and that's kind of what we are really asking for. A lot of people need to be part of the conversation. All of us contribute differently, and that's kind of what I've sensed. The universities, some of the other telco companies that were there have contributed both financially and non-financially for us to be able to do the work. But what is critical about it is that it must not just be centralized in Midrand, all right? It must be able to reach as many people as possible, but more importantly, solve our problems, all right? How do we solve access to healthcare? How do we improve the delivery of education? How can we improve the productivity of companies? So it was very important for us that we don't just have a conference, but we organize it in a multi-sectoral way, so that the agriculture people really understand what this means for them, and they can have the right response. So it's been a steep learning opportunity for me as well, just as an individual.
You mentioned the right kind of things there, because I spoke to a guest a little earlier who made note that we don't necessarily have to create robotics, we don't have to create AI, we just need to formulate a way to ensure that those work best for our problems. Do you feel that we're identifying the right mechanisms to solve problems that are, of course, truly South African, truly African as well?
I think it's a start. I mean, I think, well, in a sense, actually, in a perverse way, we don't have a choice. Yes. Our challenge of inequality is so big. And the only way in which we can begin to drive and narrow that equality gap is how do we leverage technology? And how do we give even the person who is unemployed, who's looking for a job, the platform to be able to look for a job, find a job, and be part of the national economy. So the technology then will enable us to be able to move forward. But it means we must then teach differently. It means that we must organize our health systems differently. I mean, doctors today in public hospitals, many of them spend a lot of time taking medical history because we've not stored it in a way in which they can use it and spend more time seeing patients. So changing some of those things, I think, will change the experience of a whole lot of South Africans. Yeah, and all of us can be part of something that is bigger than us, and that actually lifts a whole lot of our people forward, which is what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. And very finally, just a question that I've sort of been asking around, and I suppose it's giving people the understanding as to what the Fourth Industrial Revolution actually is. What is it to you?
Well, for me, what it means is that technology will play a dominant role, not just in the telecom sector that I'm in, but in almost everything that I do. In how I consume entertainment. In the past, I used to get into a taxi and go to a cinema and watch a movie. But now I can watch it on a smartphone. It means that when I want to know something very quickly, in the past I needed to have a whole list of encyclopedia But now actually I can punch a couple of things on my phone and find that information. It means when I'm lost, I can find my way to some place. So technology, I'm using it to solve my practical problems. And everybody else, and as a country therefore, we need to be able to use it. All of these things are there. And we just need to be able to apply them and get the right people who can enhance them and make them even better than what we have.
Mr. Maseko, appreciate your time. Really great chatting to you as well here. And hopefully we'll chat again very soon as he helps, of course, lead the conversation there when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. A company, of course, dealing with not just data, not just communication, but certainly the advancement of technology in South Africa that will need to take into it the fourth industrial revolution and then spread it across the entire country and, of course, the continent. Do we form part of that conversation? Well, here is the start of that. We'll continue the conversation right here at the 4th Industrial Revolution Summit at Gallagher Convention Center in Midrand. Back to you in studio. So we're discussing the 4th Industrial Revolution, of course, and just how different elements of not just government, but even the private sector could certainly help. And even though it has been a long time since the first printing press, the significance of the post office, though, is certainly one that is needed to be earmarked. Just how, however, can the post office become a part of this discussion, revolutionize the way we think and do things, and add technology to the spectrum? Let's chat now to Mark Barnes from the South African Post Office then as we unpack this just a little bit more. Mr. Barnes, thank you so much for the time. It's a conversation that I suppose is very interesting for what some might think is an institution that is really just paper-based. There's more to it though, surely.
Yeah, there is. I mean, thank you. You know, successful post offices around the world have become integrated organisms that do post, financial services, e-commerce and logistics. Okay. The post office here is not just a post office. We are the biggest footprint in South Africa. We are a commercially irreplaceable infrastructure owned by the government, and the challenge for us is to leverage that. We will be the Uber of postal services. We will bring post to you. The days of you going to the mall to collect your jacket are over. You're going to order it and we're going to deliver it. And in South Africa, the post office is the most relevant infrastructure to the rural areas. In fact, it's the only formal interface with the rural areas. So we go beyond post. We're now moving into financial services. We already pay social grants to over 7 million people out in the deep rural areas. Why? Because we are a trusted arm of government that can deliver efficiently, and we have taken that business back from the private sector into the fiscus, into state capacity where it belongs. We are talking joint ventures of e-commerce Africa, where we will combine with post offices around Africa and in Europe to create a platform for e-commerce in Africa. Why shouldn't we have our own? Why must we take Amazon's prices? Why must we take Alibaba's prices when we are the fastest growing continent in the world? So technology is an assister to us. It changes our footprint into the footprint delivery of South Africa.
Yeah. The difficulties, though, in doing this, does that relate just to funding? Is it delayed to maybe mindsets around how the fourth industrial revolution is supposed to look even? What are the issues that you're possibly facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is primarily, you know, money comes where money is attractive, okay, where capital is attractive. We don't see ourselves requiring funding from the state for these kinds of things. Project finance, if you're going to build a fantastic, imagine a fantastic e-commerce sorting facility at OR Tambo, taking all of that in and outbound, exporting our stuff for a change, traffic, and doing it in our own systems. Do you think we'll get the money to do that? Hell yes. You know, because it makes self-evident commercial sense. So money's not the issue. The real issue is a cultural change about our people. And it's about how we think about ourselves, quite honestly. We've got to get over our inferiority complexes, and we've got to understand, and I've seen it real and live, the changes that have happened in the post office. Our people doing stuff that is leading edge, and we can do it. Just give us a chance. And I can tell you that we can grow a competitive e-commerce, logistics, financial services organism within the state-owned infrastructure, which is now just the post office.
You've certainly worked hard in getting this situation right, particularly at the post office.
Yeah.
And yes, fine, you've received some sort of help from government, but the significant element now is ensuring that it's not just government assistance, right? It's moving yourselves forward onto your own frontier, onto your own footsteps. How do you ensure that other people sort of follow a similar example, whether it be a parastatal, whether it be a startup company, whatever the case might be?
Well, you know, I must say, without government in the beginning, we wouldn't have done this. Yeah. Okay, they gave us the capital, they gave us the business opportunities. But now we have to become a competitive business. We have to be, because technology doesn't wait for rules. Okay, and so we have to become an employer of choice. We have to make cultural changes in the organization. I want people in 2030 to be leaving investment banks and joining the post office. I want the smarts there. I want 5 smart people who employ 5 smart people who double up and end up with 50 smart people. Because the business model is overwhelming. We are the lowest unit cost of production because of our extensive reach. Okay, and so we also have a social mandate in the post office, which is we have to be a Mtata, whether it makes sense or not. So we may as well make the best of it, okay? And we can, because of those economies, we can deliver on the social mandate, because we will do financial services for LSM 1 to 4 where nobody wants to go. We will deliver post because the government requires us to do so. And that mixture of social and commercial mandate is what's going to set us apart and lower the unit cost. We are not only about making money, we are about enabling citizens and delivering as an organ of state a trusted service. One of the reasons we're doing SASA is because the Gogos can rest peacefully understanding that no one's doing Section 26A deductions off them anymore. There are going to be no loan sharks in their lives anymore. There are going to be no double funeral policies in their lives anymore. That's where an organ of state with a technology mindset can start making inroads into where the commercial players are. And I can tell you that technology is a huge part of e-money. We're going to, one day in 3 years' time, there'll be no more cash, okay? Yep. The Gogos will be going with their cell phones to collect their social grants, and they will person to person migrate the money into the stokvel, and then they will take their SASA card to a spaza shop where they will transact, and we will eventually reduce the cost per unit of consumption for the poor, which is currently much higher than it is for the rich. That's what we will do, and that starts addressing inequality in South Africa.
Extremely passionate about this, Mr. Bonds. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Congratulations on the job, and keep doing an absolutely stellar job at the post office as well then. Thank you so much for that. Mark Bonds there from the South African Post Office, of course. Giving you the sentiment then clearly that it's not going to be easy, but it is possible. It is certainly a sentiment that needs to be driven home, that we start somewhere, but build onto it, building the capacity and ensuring that you know what the ultimate plan is, and building on that now and always. The 4th Industrial Revolution Summit here at Gallagher Convention Center in Midrand. I'm Arabile Gumete, back to studio.